Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex Radford. I'm an English solicitor and Spanish lawyer, a partner and owner of my lawyer in Spain. And today I'm joined by AJ from the USA. Hi there, AJ. How are you?
Hey Alex, how are you doing?
Very good, thanks. Very good. So where are you at the moment then, AJ?
I am in Atlanta in the United States.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic, excellent. So I'm traveling myself at the moment. I'm in the Canary Islands. So we act for clients buying, selling, and inheriting property all over Spain, and also doing business in Spain. So you happen to find me in the Canaries today. And what I'd like to say is, thank you ever so much for contacting us to assist you with legal representation in buying a property in Spain. Just tell me, AJ, what attracts you to Spain and what areas are you interested in?
Yeah, I've lived a couple times in Spain, in Marbella, in Madrid, have family that are Spanish, familiar with the culture. My family's from Cadiz, from that area in La Linea. Um, it's always been a place that we love to visit and spend time, and a place that we eventually want to live. So my wife and I reached out to you, and we decided that purchasing a home in Spain was next up on our list of priorities of things that we wanted to accomplish, and started looking at different locales after completing the Camino de Santiago and settled on Andalusia. Wanted to be
Excellent.
somewhere where we could be close to the water, also somewhere that had access to skiing, and an international airport that would allow us to continue to work and travel and see our clients.
Excellent. And AJ, is this your first overseas property purchase then?
It is.
Excellent. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, those areas you mentioned. Yeah. So I live not far. I know Cadiz really quite well. We actually had a client buying there recently, which is it's a lovely area. Very busy in the summer, not so busy in the winter. It kind of dies down a bit in the winter. Then the kind of towns are around Cadiz. And then yeah, I agree with you. So I live not far away from Sierra Nevada, and it's good. There's good snow at the moment because it's been snowing up there. So I'm gonna just kind of highlight some points for you to consider in your Spanish property purchase to ensure that you don't get burned. Okay. So I've got some questions for you first. Will this be a holiday home, AJ, or will it be a permanent move to Spain?
I think initially we'll rent out the house from time to time. We have two young kids in school, so we can't be over there full time at this point. But down the road, we would like to move to Spain and make that our permanent residence.
Okay. So basically, as an American, Canadians, and non-Europeans such as us Brits, if you're planning to buy a holiday home in Spain, you can spend 90 days in a 180-day period. So if you plan to move to Spain, then we'd have to consider what visa is best for you. And in effect, there's three main types of visas that we're working or we're obtaining for our clients, and those are the non-lucrative visa, which means you cannot work and you retire to Spain and reside here, and you'll need money in the bank account of approximately 36,000 euros, uh, more or less the same on dollars actually at the moment. If you want to work in Spain, then you can apply for a digital nomad visa, but that means you'd be working for an overseas company, and your company would have to authorize you to work in Spain. Or if you've got deep pockets, you buy a property more than 500,000 euros, and you've got to buy that debt free in the name of at least one of you only who owns 500,000 euros of that property, then you can actually live and work in Spain because that's called the golden visa. Okay. So maybe at the moment, you'll just be restricted to the 90 days, and then further down the line, we can talk about the visas. So tell me, AJ, what kind of type of property are you looking for?
Yeah, we would like a villa. We'd like to have our own space. We're used to in America having a lot of space and both in the house itself and the property as well. So, that's something that we're comfortable with. And we have two young kids, so having space for them is something that's important. Never lived in an apartment, downtown in a city. So I think a villa, 3 to 4, 5 bedroom in size, and then some land for the kids to play on. It doesn't have to be huge, but something where they can go outside and have some space to run around. And ideally in walking distance to the beach. If it can have a view, that would be outstanding. And other than that, we're relatively flexible. We'd like to have a pool. And those are kind of the criteria that we're thinking about.
Okay, that sounds good, AJ. So basically, my best advice to you there is that that you kind of contact local estate agents, realtors in the area. You send them a brief of the property that you're looking for, the budget that you'd be prepared to go up to, and then basically ask them, ask them to recommend some of those properties too. As you've mentioned that you want to rent the property, it's important that the property has a license of first occupation, or that one can be obtained. Okay, so we'll cover that off in our legal due diligence for you, but that is important to kind of cover off those bases. So you buy a property, and then it's got this license first occupation, which means that it was built legally, the town hall came and inspected it, and it was given the license of first occupation. The newer houses will tend to have that, but some of the older houses won't have that, and there's a procedure for obtaining that. Now, if you're looking for properties, obviously there's, go onto Google, of course, and there's some great web property portals. You've got idealista.com, you've got Kyero, which is kyero.com, and then you've got aplaceandsun.com, and then obviously lots of estate agents will have their own direct listings. Okay, so really, as far as budgeting is concerned, AJ, you've talked about Andalusia, so it's really important to kind of talk to you about budget and how much to expect to spend on the property over and above the purchase price. So the purchase costs vary from region to region. So we've got 17 regions in Spain, similar to your states in the USA. And for example, as Andalusia is your destination, a second-hand property, you're going to pay transfer tax at the rate of 7%. If you bought a brand new property, you pay 10% VAT tax and then 1.2% stamp duty. So if it's a second-hand property, I'd say 10% on top of the purchase price will be sufficient. But if it was a brand new property, then you're looking at 13, 14%. And then if you went outside of the Andalusia area, just kind of some of the other popular areas where we act for clients buying, Catalonia, Valencia, their transfer tax is 10% as opposed to 7% here in Andalusia. So there's an extra cost involved. And there you'd probably be looking at a purchase on top of the purchase price, 14, 15%. And what about financing? Have you considered finance? Do you want to finance this purchase?
Yeah, we've considered it. I know it's a lot different than the American process, where it's based off the ECB rate and how that's moving. So I think it's something that we would think about depending on the purchase price, and we'd be interested to know exactly how much we would need to borrow and what that looks like.
Okay, so what I'll do, AJ, is I'll introduce you to an independent mortgage broker, speak to them, find out how much they're going to charge you to give you some advice. But generally, they tend to be able to save you quite a lot of money because they'll have specific products from specific banks, and you'll probably save more money if you go to a mortgage broker than if you went to the bank directly. Typically, you can borrow up to 65% of the loan to value. So on top of that, of course, you're going to need that deposit of an extra 35%. And then depending on the area you buy in, another, say, between 10 and 15%. So you're going to need a deposit of at least, I'd say, 45%.
Okay, that's good to know. And in general, what do lawyers normally charge for this sort of transaction?
Okay, right, that's a great question, AJ. Typically, we charge 1% of the purchase price with a minimum fee of €1,600, and we will send our terms of business to you. We'd ask for monies up front, and what we do in the firm is that we ask for a certain fee up front, typically anywhere between €1,000 and €1,500, depending on the value of the property and the work to be carried out. And then we start work. We would put a power of attorney in place, and that's a document that authorizes us to act for you in Spain. And then just before completion, we'd ask you to transfer the purchase costs to your bank. So we'd open up a Spanish bank account for you, and then with online accounting, you would then transfer fees to us. But typically, if you allow 1% of the purchase price plus tax, that will cover legal costs.
Excellent. So if I think about, the steps after that, coming to an agreement with finance and legals in place, what does that look like from finding a home to purchase?
Yeah, so basically, I would suggest we send you terms of business, you instruct us, even though you haven't found a property yet, we put that power of attorney in place. Speak to the finance company, stroke independent mortgage broker, get them on board, furnish them with your financials so that you know how much you can borrow, and then I'd get out there and look for a property. And when you're looking for properties and dealing with the agents, I would always suggest to our buyers, regardless of the nationality, always ask the estate agents, why are the sellers selling, how long the property's been on the market for, and if the seller has rejected or accepted any offers, just to give you a bit more intel on why, the price that you may achieve. And I would always kind of, for secondhand properties, I'd go in at least 10% below the asking price. But you're going to have a better feel for the market when you come out for, because each area and pockets of areas are different, and prices, the area might be in demand, and you might not get anything off the price. Whereas if the property's been on the market for a while, you might get something off the price.
It's really good to know. And how about how long this process takes? I mean, from the time you make an offer to having it accepted to maybe when that closing will occur, is there a kind of a standard window of how long that process takes?
Yeah, I'd say anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks. So if you are going to arrange finance, then then that could delay the process. It could be kind of towards the end of those 12 weeks, because the banks will want to value the property, carry out their own due diligence, and then provide you with a valuation and the mortgage in principle offer. And then we've got to sign various documents for you at the bank. If you've got finance in place, I'd say 12 weeks ish. If it's basically, if there's, typically most of our clients will buy a property which is ready to go. So usually the kind of sellers may have moved out, and they can complete in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. So as I said, it's because as soon as you put the offer in, you'll be asked to sign a reservation contract and pay a deposit over, and that will set out the timescale. So it is important to have the timescale figured out before you submit the offer, or so submit the timescales with the offer. So we will offer you X amount of euros. We'll put down a deposit of, say, I don't know, minimal deposit 2 to 6,000 euros to take the property off the market in the next 48 hours. We exchange contracts and pay the balance of 10%, say in 4 weeks' time, and then we complete either 4 weeks or 6 weeks later. But we would get a feel for those timescales with you and the agent on your chosen property.
Okay, excellent. And I have my own LLC here in the States. Is it possible to have an ownership structure the house owned by an LLC?
Yeah, certainly you can buy a property in an LLC. We'd always recommend that basically, if you went down the LLC route, that you actually your LLC owns and incorporates a Spanish company, and then the Spanish company owns the property. But the downside of that is that if you have got the property in a company in Spain, it means you have to rent the property from the company at the market rate. So as you're thinking of moving to Spain and living that property, I wouldn't recommend that you buy the property in a company. I'd probably only recommend you buy the property in a company if you were going to just rent it out and hardly use it at all. So yes, the LLC structure is more, LLC with a Spanish limited company is more popular when you're going to rent the property out and not use it. But in your case, I'd say, we can discuss it further, but buy it in your own name. And also, banks prefer to lend to an individual rather than to a company. And typically, you might be able to borrow, say, 50, 60% with a company, and maybe 65, 70% in your own name, subject to valuation and your financial standing. So yeah, that's the answer there.
It seems it depends on what you want to use the property for, so that's really helpful. And
Yeah.
how about moving forward? I mean, what are the recurring costs on Spanish property ownership for a home, especially a primary residence? I mean, we pay exorbitant property taxes here in the United States. Is it similar in Spain?
No, it's not at all. So in effect, as a foreigner owning property in Spain, you'll pay what's known as the non-residence income tax. That's basically there's a video on our YouTube channel about that. But it's based on, say, buying a property of 200,000, you're looking at 200 euros a year. That's the kind of non-resident income tax. Of course, if you move to Spain and you're a resident, you wouldn't pay that. So then the recurring costs would be town hall rates. And town hall rates, as part of our due diligence, we'll be able to tell you how much that is, and we'll set up a standing order for you for payment of that with your bank. But again, that's much more reasonable than than other countries. And then, of course, your normal charges: water, electric, insurance. And if you're buying a property on a homeowners association that kind of controls the communal areas, there'll be costs there. But again, the agent should be able to advise you up front about what these costs will be. But I certainly, I bet you bottom dollar they'll be a lot cheaper than the USA.
I hope so. And this all sounds great. Like, is there anything else that we're missing here? Do you have any final tips maybe for me as I embark on this process?
Yeah, I'd certainly recommend that you put in place a Spanish will. So, we will put the power of attorney in place for you. You can sign it in the States. With that, we can open the bank account. We get your Spanish tax numbers, which are the N.I.Es. Or we can act for you when you find the property. Even if you're not here in Spain, you just come for a long weekend, or you're traveling back. We can act for you in that purchase. We collect the keys for you, hand them over at completion, and at some stage, I'd say put in place a Spanish will. So a Spanish will for Spanish assets, and then a US will for non-Spanish assets. And if you update the US will, just refer to the Spanish will, because it will make it much easier and quicker to use the Spanish will. When it comes to being used, or as and when you pass many years from now, it will make it quicker and easier and cheaper for your heirs to manage. But that's I'd say the final tip. And just go easy. There's no rush. So I'd say legals, finances up front, and then engage with the agents.
Awesome. This was really helpful, Alex. Thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure, AJ. Listen, if you've got anything else, just come back to me. But we really do look forward to seeing you in Spain and getting you over the line on this Spanish property journey.
Beautiful. We're very excited. Thank you.
Thanks, then.